My name is Brittany C. Phillips, and I was 30 years old when the man I loved looked into my eyes 2 weeks before our wedding and told me he couldn't marry me because he was still in love with his ex-girlfriend. The place cards arrived on a quiet Tuesday morning. I remember the sunlight pouring through the bay window of the home Liam and I had bought together, catching tiny particles of dust that drifted through the air like floating gold. I had just finished assembling the final, impossibly complicated bookshelf for what was supposed to become our shared library. Fresh coffee filled the room. The scent of newly cut pine lingered in the air. Everything looked exactly like the beginning of forever. Liam sat at the dining table, surrounded by wedding binders, fabric samples, guest lists, and neatly arranged place cards. His handwriting had always been beautiful. He often joked that elegant cursive was the only useful thing Chloe had ever taught him. "Look at this," he said, smiling softly as he held one card toward me. "Mr. and Mrs. Henderson." It finally feels real. I walked over, brushing sawdust from my jeans before kissing his forehead. It is real. Only 2 more weeks. We actually made it. He smiled back. But the smile stopped somewhere before reaching his eyes. I had noticed that expression several times during the previous month. I convinced myself it was ordinary wedding stress. After all, I designed buildings for a living. I understood deadlines, pressure, last-minute changes. Planning a wedding seemed far more complicated than constructing a hotel. "I've been thinking," Liam said quietly. "Maybe we should add a separate children's table." "My cousin's twins might destroy the centerpieces," I laughed. "Whatever you decide. You're basically the CEO of this wedding." "I'll make more coffee." That was our life. Comfortable conversations, shared routines, small jokes. 3 years together had created something I believed nothing could shake. I was wrong. That evening, I climbed into bed carrying my tablet and a novel I had been slowly reading for weeks. Liam entered almost an hour later. He didn't change into pajamas. Instead, he sat quietly on the edge of the bed. The mattress dipped beneath his weight. "Brittany?" His voice barely rose above a whisper. "We need to talk." I immediately set the tablet aside. My heartbeat stumbled. Not because I understood, because somewhere inside me, I already feared I would. "What happened? Is everything okay? Is it the venue? I can call them first thing tomorrow." He slowly shook his head. "It's not the venue." He inhaled sharply, then looked directly at me. Tears already filled his eyes. "I can't do this." The room became strangely silent. "I'm sorry. So incredibly sorry. I can't marry you." I waited, almost expecting him to laugh, to explain it was panic, cold feet, anything. Instead, he simply cried. "What are you talking about?" My voice sounded strangely calm. "This is just wedding nerves. Everyone gets nervous." "It isn't that." He wiped his face. "It's my heart. My heart isn't here anymore." The sentence felt impossible. "We bought this house together. We planned this wedding together. We've spent 3 years building a life together. When exactly did your heart leave?" He closed his eyes. "I thought I was over her." Everything inside me became still. There was only one woman he could possibly mean. "Chloe," he nodded. Fresh tears rolled down his face. "She contacted me a few months ago. We only talked at first, but everything came back. The excitement, the passion. It was never like that with us." Every sentence landed with surgical precision. "So," I spoke carefully, "for months, while we've been choosing invitations, booking vendors, buying furniture, planning our wedding, you've been falling in love with your ex-girlfriend again." It wasn't supposed to happen. I never wanted to hurt you. I'm just confused. I can't marry you while I'm in love with someone else. I looked slowly around the bedroom. Our photographs, our furniture, our wedding planner lying open on the dresser. Everything suddenly looked borrowed, like someone else's life. The woman sitting on the bed an hour earlier would have begged him to stay. She would have reminded him of vacations, birthdays, dreams, promises. That woman disappeared the moment he chose Chloe. I quietly stood. Okay. Liam looked up immediately. Okay? That's all? What does that mean? It means I understand. You love Chloe. You don't want to marry me. I heard you. His expression shifted from relief to confusion. You're not going to fight for us? I walked toward the bedroom door. What exactly would I be fighting for? A future you've already decided belongs to someone else? I paused without looking back. I'm not going to beg someone to love me. Then I left the room. The demolition of our future had already begun. I didn't sleep that night. I sat alone in the guest room watching the digital clock creep from 1 minute to the next. Our wedding was 13 days away. Only a few hours earlier, that countdown had filled me with excitement. Now it had become nothing more than another deadline. There would be time to grieve later. Right now, there was only work. At exactly 7 the next morning, I heard Liam moving through the hallway. The shower stopped. Cabinet doors opened and closed. The ordinary sounds of our home suddenly felt foreign. When I walked into the kitchen, he was sitting at the island with a mug of untouched tea. His eyes were swollen. He looked as though he hadn't slept either. He watched me carefully, almost hopefully, as if he expected me to break down, to beg, to bargain. Instead, I quietly poured myself coffee. Brittany. I didn't answer immediately. I need to make some phone calls. He blinked. That's all you're going to say? For now. I carried my coffee into my office and gently closed the door behind me. The first number I dialed belonged to my mother. She answered on the second ring. Her cheerful voice almost broke me. Good morning, sweetheart. Your father and I were just talking about the rehearsal dinner. I closed my eyes. The wedding is canceled. Silence. Long enough that I checked whether the call had disconnected. What happened? Liam's in love with Chloe again. He told me last night. Another silence followed. Then I heard my mother quietly crying. Oh, Brittany, are you okay? I will be. We're coming over. No, please don't. I need to handle this myself. Honey, I've already made my decision. She understood. I love you. I love you too. When the call ended, I opened the master wedding spreadsheet. Every vendor, every reservation, every payment, everything was organized. For years, I had believed that careful planning could protect a future. Now I understood that no spreadsheet could account for betrayal. I started making calls. Hello, this is Brittany Phillips. I'm calling about the wedding reservation on the 15th. Unfortunately, the event has been canceled. The coordinator apologized. She asked if we planned to reschedule. No. The groom is in love with his former girlfriend. There won't be another date. She became very quiet. I'll send the cancellation paperwork this afternoon. Thank you. The next call went to the caterer, then the florist, then the photographer, then the musicians. Every conversation followed the same pattern: calm, brief, honest. There was no reason to invent excuses. The truth required fewer words than any lie. Around noon, I walked into the living room for water. Liam sat wrapped in a blanket staring at his phone. He looked completely bewildered. The band just contacted me. I nodded. I canceled them. They said they were sorry to hear why the wedding ended. He stared at me. You told them? Yes. What exactly did you say? I met his eyes. I told them the groom fell back in love with his ex-girlfriend. His face immediately reddened. You didn't have to tell people that. You embarrassed me. For the first time since the previous evening, I smiled. It wasn't cruel. It was simply tired. No. You embarrassed yourself. I only explained why the wedding no longer exists. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. There was nothing he could argue, because every word was true. I returned to my office. The next phone call wasn't connected to the wedding. It was to a real estate broker I trusted professionally. I need to sell a house. As quickly as possible. Fully furnished. She hesitated. That's sudden. It is. I'll have photographers there tomorrow. Perfect. By late afternoon, I rented a storage unit for everything that belonged exclusively to me. Books, architectural models, tools, family photographs. The pieces of my life that existed before Liam entered it. When evening arrived, the house had become strangely quiet. Liam had left. Whether he went to a hotel or to Chloe, I didn't know. For the first time, I realized I genuinely didn't care. I walked through every room slowly. The dining table still held dozens of unfinished place cards. I picked one up, turned it over, then dropped it into the recycling bin. Paper, ink, nothing more. The grief waited somewhere deep beneath the surface. I could feel it pressing upward. But not yet. There were still contracts to terminate, boxes to pack, a future to rebuild. Within 10 days, the house sold. The market had been strong, and my asking price encouraged multiple offers. After paying the mortgage, I transferred Liam's half of the remaining equity directly into his account. No message, no explanation, no goodbye. It became the final financial connection between us. My architecture firm maintained offices across the country. I requested a transfer. Denver, a city I had always wanted to call home. Ironically, Liam had always dismissed it as too cold, too rugged, too far from everything familiar. The transfer was approved within a week. I used the money that had once been reserved for our honeymoon to lease a modern loft overlooking the mountains. Then I blocked Liam's number, deleted every social media account connected to our old life, created new private ones. Piece by piece, I disappeared from the future he had already abandoned. Denver welcomed me with silence, not the lonely silence I had left behind, a peaceful one, the kind filled with distant trains, crisp mountain air, and mornings that belonged entirely to me. For the first few weeks, I built routines instead of memories. I unpacked boxes one room at a time, started hiking on weekends, joined a climbing gym after work. My new office overlooked downtown, and every evening the Rockies glowed orange beneath a setting sun. For the first time in years, my future wasn't attached to someone else's promises. News about Liam didn't come from him. It arrived through one person I had forgotten to block. Stacy, a mutual friend. 3 weeks after I moved, my phone buzzed. Hey, Brittany. I heard you transferred to Denver. I hope you're okay. Things are a mess here. I almost ignored it. Instead, curiosity got the better of me. What happened? Her reply came almost immediately. Liam and Chloe broke up. Already? About a month. I stared at the screen. Not shocked, not pleased, just empty. Another message followed. Apparently, Chloe told him she wasn't ready for commitment after all. She admitted the excitement was chasing him away from you. Once she actually had him, things weren't exciting anymore. I closed the conversation. There was a strange symmetry to it. He had traded certainty for excitement, only to discover excitement rarely survives ordinary mornings. A week later, Stacy texted again. Jake, well, Chloe's new boyfriend after Liam, left her too. She says she's completely devastated. This time, I didn't answer. Life had finally begun moving forward. I wasn't interested in dragging pieces of the past behind me. Days became weeks, weeks became months. Work flourished. I led 2 major architectural projects. One won a regional design award. My manager hinted that partnership might not be far away. Then, unexpectedly, I met someone. His name was Ethan. We lived in the same apartment building. He worked as an environmental engineer. Our first conversation happened because we reached for the same coffee creamer in the lobby cafe. There were no fireworks, no dramatic music, no overwhelming passion. Just laughter, easy conversation, respect. 3 months later, we started dating. One evening, while watching the sunset from my balcony, Ethan looked toward the mountains. I like how quiet it is here. So do I. You've lived through something painful. It wasn't a question. No, it was painful then. Now, it's simply part of my history. He nodded. I appreciate that. You don't talk about your ex like you hate him. I don't. I just don't belong in that story anymore. Meanwhile, Liam apparently couldn't accept the same truth. 6 months after I left, my phone vibrated. Unknown number. Hi, Brittany. It's Liam. I know you probably won't answer. I saw a picture your mom posted of the Rockies. Remember when we talked about moving there someday? I hope you're doing okay. I stared at the message. There was something strangely ordinary about it, as though he expected nostalgia to erase betrayal. I deleted it. Blocked the number. 2 weeks later. Another unknown number. This time he left a voicemail. His voice sounded exhausted. Brittany, I made the biggest mistake of my life. Chloe, it wasn't real. She left. I've lost everything. I keep thinking about our kitchen. The mornings you made coffee. The books. The life we built. I was an idiot. Please, just let me hear your voice. I listened without interruption. When the recording ended, I quietly deleted it. He wasn't grieving me. He was grieving the stability he had abandoned. The difference mattered. 3 days later, another call arrived, this time from his mother. Brittany, her tone was surprisingly gentle. Liam isn't doing well. I'm sorry to hear that. He barely sleeps. He's blaming himself. I remained silent. He loved you. No. He loved what I gave him, she sighed. People make mistakes. I looked out across the Denver skyline. No. They make choices. This wasn't one mistake. It was months of choices. He chose Chloe. He chose secrecy. He chose to end our wedding. I simply accepted his decision. Her voice hardened slightly. So that's it? After everything? You're just walking away? I already walked away. The day he told me another woman mattered more. She became quiet. A good woman forgives. I smiled sadly. A good woman also knows when forgiveness doesn't require reconciliation. Neither of us spoke. Finally, I added, I truly hope Liam heals. But I'm no longer responsible for helping him do that. I ended the call. The following evening, another text appeared, a third unknown number. You're unbelievably cold. If you really loved me, you would have fought for us. You just gave up. Maybe Chloe was right about you. I read every word. There it was, the final attempt. If guilt failed, blame would replace it. He had rewritten the story inside his own mind. I wasn't the woman he betrayed. I was the woman who supposedly abandoned him. I didn't respond, didn't block the number. I simply deleted the conversation, because some arguments only continue if both people keep speaking. Mine had ended the night he said he loved Chloe. Everything afterward was only noise. Exactly 1 year after I left our hometown, work brought me back. My firm had won the bid for a major redevelopment project, and I was leading the presentation. The city looked familiar, but it no longer felt like mine. The streets were the same, the cafes were the same, even the traffic sounded the same. I was the one who had changed. The presentation finished shortly after noon. As I packed my laptop, my attorney called. There is one final document connected to the house sale. I thought everything was finished. So did I. A tax adjustment was overlooked. You can sign electronically or stop by the office before your flight. I chose the office. After 12 months, I wanted every remaining legal thread cut forever. The paperwork took less than 15 minutes. Walking back toward my hotel, I noticed the little coffee shop Liam and I used to visit every Sunday morning. For a second, I hesitated. Then I walked inside. Not because I missed him, because I wanted to prove to myself that memories no longer owned the place. I ordered a black coffee. As I waited, I caught the familiar scent of cedar cologne behind me. Brittany. I turned. Liam stood only a few feet away. He looked older, not because of gray hair or wrinkles, because disappointment had settled permanently into his posture. His expensive clothes couldn't hide the exhaustion in his eyes. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. I heard you were in town. His voice was cautious. I hoped I might see you. I doubted chance had anything to do with it. He had always known how to gather information through mutual acquaintances. You found me. I did. Can we talk? I glanced at my watch. My flight wasn't for another 3 hours. 5 minutes, I thought. 5 minutes to close the final chapter. All right. 5 minutes. We sat near the back of the cafe. He wrapped both hands around his coffee without drinking it. You look... He searched for the right word. Happy. I am. I'm glad. He smiled weakly. I wish I could say the same. I waited. He finally exhaled. Everything fell apart after you left. Chloe left again. I lost friends. My promotion disappeared. My apartment. He laughed bitterly. I had to sell almost everything. He looked directly into my eyes. I deserve it. I said nothing. I've replayed that night 1,000 times. The place cards. The bedroom. The way you just accepted it. I kept expecting you to stop me. To fight for us. His voice cracked. When you didn't, I convinced myself you never really loved me. I leaned back quietly. So that's what you've been telling yourself? He nodded. It was easier. But it wasn't true. No. It wasn't. Silence settled between us. Then he whispered, I was wrong. I confused excitement with love. I confused history with destiny. I thought Chloe represented something I'd lost. What she really represented. He smiled sadly. My worst decision. He reached carefully across the table, not enough to touch me, just enough to hope. I know I don't deserve another chance. But if there's even the smallest possibility, we could rebuild. I'll move. I'll do therapy. I'll spend the rest of my life making this right. For the first time since we sat down, I smiled, not because his words moved me, because they reminded me how much I had grown. Liam, you keep talking about rebuilding. There isn't anything left to rebuild. His shoulders dropped. The woman you want back, She doesn't exist anymore. I loved someone who promised to spend his life with me. The man sitting across from me chose another woman 2 weeks before our wedding. You ended our future. I simply accepted reality. His eyes filled with tears. I was terrified. I know. I was selfish. I know. I destroyed everything. You did. He covered his face briefly. I hate who I became. I believe you. He looked up hopefully. Then why can't we try again? Because believing you're sorry and trusting you again are two completely different things. I paused. You taught me something valuable. What? That love without respect isn't enough. And once respect disappears, love eventually follows. The waitress quietly refilled our coffee cups. Neither of us touched them. I still love you. His voice barely rose above a whisper. I answered gently. I don't. I don't hate you either. I simply don't carry you anymore. He closed his eyes. I thought time might change things. It did. For both of us. But not in the way you hoped. I stood and picked up my coat. My flight leaves soon. Brittany, I looked back one last time. I truly hope you build a good life. But it won't include me. I left the cafe without looking over my shoulder. Outside, crisp autumn air filled my lungs. For the first time, returning to the city no longer felt like reopening an old wound. It felt like visiting a place where someone else had once lived. I walked out of the cafe without looking back. For years, I had imagined what our final conversation might sound like. Maybe there would be shouting, maybe tears, maybe one last argument over who had destroyed what. Instead, there was only quiet. The kind of quiet that comes when every unanswered question has finally found its answer. By the time I reached the airport, I felt lighter than I had in years. My attorney texted shortly afterward. Everything is officially finalized. There are no remaining legal ties. I stared at the message for several seconds before smiling. The last document. The last signature. The last thread connecting my old life to my new one. Gone. When I landed in Denver that evening, Ethan was waiting outside baggage claim. He smiled the moment he saw me. Long trip? Long chapter. He wrapped one arm around my shoulders as we walked toward the parking garage. Everything okay? I looked toward the mountains rising beyond the city lights. It finally is. Life settled into something wonderfully ordinary. Work continued growing. My architecture team completed the downtown redevelopment project 6 months ahead of schedule. The design received a national award. Shortly afterward, I accepted an invitation to become one of the youngest partners in the firm. The celebration wasn't extravagant. Just dinner with Ethan, a few close friends, and my parents, who had quietly supported every difficult decision without ever telling me what they thought I should do. That support meant more than they probably realized. One autumn afternoon, Ethan and I hiked one of our favorite mountain trails. Halfway to the summit, he stopped walking. Brittany. I turned. He looked unusually nervous. You've taught me something. What? That real love isn't loud. It isn't dramatic. It shows up every day. Then he reached into his backpack. I'd like to spend the rest of my life showing up. He knelt on one knee. The ring wasn't enormous. It wasn't designed to impress strangers. It was elegant, simple, exactly us. Brittany C. Phillips. Will you marry me? For a brief second, memories flashed through my mind. Place cards, wedding binders, a bedroom where someone chose another woman. Then those memories quietly disappeared, because they no longer belonged to my future. I smiled. Yes. The word came without hesitation, without fear, without wondering whether the person in front of me secretly wished they were somewhere else. Months later, Our wedding took place in a small lodge overlooking the Rockies. Only close family, close friends. No elaborate production. No impossible expectations. No pretending. As I walked down the aisle, Ethan's eyes never left mine. There was certainty in them. Not excitement chasing uncertainty. Not nostalgia competing with commitment. Just certainty. After the ceremony, my father raised a glass. I've watched my daughter rebuild herself from something no parent ever wants their child to experience. He smiled proudly. The remarkable part isn't that she survived heartbreak. It's that she never allowed heartbreak to decide who she became. There wasn't a dry eye in the room. A few weeks after the wedding, an unexpected envelope arrived without a return address. Inside was a handwritten letter. Liam. I almost threw it away unopened. Instead, I read it once. He wrote that therapy had forced him to confront the truth, that he had spent months blaming Chloe, then months blaming me, only to discover that every decision leading to his loneliness belonged to him alone. He apologized, not because he wanted another chance, because he finally understood what he had taken from me. At the bottom, he wrote one final sentence. Thank you for refusing to let me come back before I became someone worthy of changing. I folded the letter, placed it back inside the envelope, then quietly slid it into a drawer. Not because I intended to reread it, because forgiveness didn't require forgetting. It simply required letting go. One snowy evening, Ethan and I stood on our apartment balcony watching lights spread across downtown Denver. He wrapped an arm around my waist. What are you thinking about? I smiled toward the mountains. Funny enough, I'm grateful. For what? For the wedding that never happened. He laughed softly. Most people wouldn't say that. I know. But if Liam hadn't chosen Chloe, I never would have learned that loving someone should never require convincing them to stay. I leaned against him. The greatest gift that heartbreak ever gave me was introducing me to the woman I became after surviving it. My name is Brittany C. Phillips. 2 weeks before my first wedding, the man I loved told me he couldn't marry me because he was in love with another woman. At the time, I believed my life had collapsed. I couldn't have been more wrong. That wasn't the end of my story. It was the moment my real life finally began. Sometimes losing the future you planned is the only way to find the future you truly deserve.